Cheers! All right, welcome everyone to this week's episode of Coffee with Hiretual. It's season 2, episode 6, and our special guest today is career coach and recruitment specialist Yasir Khan. Yasir, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic now that I'm talking to you, Winona. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm super excited for the questions we have in store. Really excited to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of some of your perspectives, some of your thoughts. We have a really interesting discussion planned, so I'm just gonna get right into it. So if you are not new to Coffee with Hiretual, then I'm sure you already know who I am. I basically host every single episode of this season so far. But if you are new to Coffee with Hiretual, then my name is Winona. I'm the content marketing specialist at Hiretual and producer of this show. And so I'm going to hop right into the introduction of our special guest for today. Yasir, you're a career coach with extensive experience in recruitment, and that's honestly just scratching the surface of what you do. So tell us more about yourself and what you're passionate about when it comes to the whole talent process.
Oh yeah, when it comes to the talent process, my specialty and the area of focus I like is the candidate pool. I like creating the best possible experience for people both during the recruitment cycle and when I'm helping people as a career coach as well. I love working with job seekers and helping them find the most effective job searching strategies for them. So a little bit about my background. I do have a master's in counseling, specialized in education, and then I brought that forward to recruitment. Did recruitment as a coordinator, shortly after as a specialist, and then I finally decided, you know what, I want to be a career coach full time so I can work with as many possible job seekers, and here we are shortly afterwards.
Awesome, awesome. And we're gonna go right into that whole journey that you've had in this space. So, your journey in the
Yeah.
career development space pretty much started off in the recruitment side of things across multiple industries. You really recruited across so many different industries. So I guess I'm curious to know, how did you end up making this shift from that to what you're doing now? What really drove you to make that shift? I would love to hear that story.
Yeah, when I was in university, I was actually coaching a lot of people with public speaking because that's something I'm really passionate about, and I like helping people overcome their barriers when it comes to communication skills. So when I graduated out of university, I was having trouble finding a job myself, even though I consider myself someone who doesn't have a lot of issues with interviewing. So I spent 6 months ish. I couldn't really find anything, and I decided to hire a career coach myself. And she had such a profound impact on me because of the advice she shared, the questions she asked, how she redirected my job search. She made me feel a lot more motivated. And when she did that, ironically, with her help, my first job was as a recruiter. So I went from being a job seeker to being someone on the other side of the spectrum where I understood the inner workings. And then I started becoming a recruiter, and I was working with clients in aerospace, in pharmacy, in hospitality, all these different industries. And I got a pretty good idea of what every single one of those industries implies in terms of the candidates they want, what kind of talent they want. I was in a few interviews and whatnot, so you get all these patterns in all these different industries. Eventually, I did get promoted to a recruitment specialist as well because I was so passionate about helping candidates, and I really want to be that recruiter who doesn't ghost candidates. I was sure to call them every single week. Hey, listen, there's no update. I just want to let you know you're still in the pile. We're still considering you. Because I know I was there. I was a job seeker, and the last thing that I would have wanted is just to have an interview and not hear anything for the next couple of weeks, right? So I did that, and then eventually my LinkedIn following, my YouTube channel, it started growing to such a capacity that I could not do pro bono work anymore. I had to divide my time between 9 to 5 as a recruiter, 5 to about 10:30 every day as a career coach. Naturally, I could not balance the two, and I had to pick one or the other. Do I want to work for companies and help them find employees, or do I want to work for candidates and help them find jobs? And I made the latter of it as a choice, and here we are.
Oh wow, that's an awesome story. And you've seen so much happen in the employment space from two really critical perspectives: the recruiting side, the candidate side, and you have such personal experiences with both, like you mentioned, with being mentored by this career coach, ultimately ending up with your role as a recruiter. I'm sure there's just so much that you have to say about the talent process and really how it's evolved over the years and really how it is right now. So let's dial in first from what you've been hearing from the candidate side of things, especially in this whirlwind of a year that it's been. So from your conversations, I'm sure that you've been helping a lot of people recently just to really get back up on their feet and get motivated. What are job seekers now most worried about in the recruitment process in terms of what they want out of their candidate experience and how they want to approach the market, I would say?
Yeah, I love that you said, how do they want their recruitment experience? I think what candidates want is a recruitment experience. They don't even start out in that journey. And I think in the past few months, I've talked to almost 500 job seekers at this point when I was doing my research and whatnot. One of the biggest things that always comes up is I never get a response. I interviewed for this position, I don't get a response. I've applied for the position, I don't get a response. I've interviewed for the second interview, I still don't know. And unfortunately, it's a very common occurrence in recruitment, and I've heard this from so many job seekers in so many different countries and so many different industries. When it comes to their recruitment process, they just want to know what's going on. Where are we? Are you considering me? Are you still moving me forward in the application process? Because and I understand from a recruitment perspective, this can be very transactional. You have a role, you have enough people, you don't really have any personal stake in anyone's life at this point. But when people are going through this process where they've interviewed, there's a lot of emotional investment there, right? And you don't want to just not hear back from them. And a lot of people, when they have that interview, maybe after a couple of months they haven't heard anything and they finally get an interview, a lot of them emotionally put all their eggs in that one basket, right? And then when they don't hear anything, there's radio silence for a few weeks. That gets a lot of them not only demotivated, but some of them become bitter. Like if you go to LinkedIn right now, the amount of posts you will see against recruiters and hiring managers and people in HR, it's ridiculous, right? And of course, it's vastly generalized, but I know there's a percentage of job seekers who genuinely had this experience with recruiters where they've interviewed and never heard back. So I would say if there's one thing candidates are looking for from an effective recruitment process, it's absolute transparency.
Yeah, and personally, from my personal experience as well, I mean, I'm sure we've all kind of had that experience with, that radio silence after a job application or something like that. And you really brought up an interesting point. You mentioned that back when you were in the recruiting side of things, you always made sure to not ghost candidates. And again, that has always been the forefront of the discussion, the candidate ghosting and making sure that people are responding to all these applicants. And I've asked this to a couple of recruiters as well, just on the show. Actually, I would ask them, like, is this kind of realistic to do? What is the problem what's stopping a lot of talent teams from actually going out there and responding to every single one? And the answer that I've heard has pretty much been along the lines of no, it's not realistic. It's not unrealistic at all. It is very possible, if your messaging is targeted, if your job descriptions are targeted, and you're getting the appropriate candidates that are interested in, and it's not an excessive amount of people that you have to respond to. What are your thoughts on that? The whole notion of there are so many candidates, it's practically impossible for me to answer each and every single one and give them that response.
Yeah, I feel like it depends on which stage of the recruitment process they're at. If say 300 people apply to one role and each of them want feedback, what's wrong with my resume? Why didn't I get through? I can't take time out of my work to give everyone feedback, right? Which is why you have so many automation tools existing now where you can select all the candidates, send them one, hey, thank you for applying, but unfortunately we move forward with another candidate. Although I feel out of those 300 people, not all of them will ask for feedback. In fact, a vast majority of them will not. I think from a recruiter's standpoint, there's also the notion of whether you're supposed to give feedback or not, right? So there are legal terminologies, there are other reasons why you might not want to be very specific, because I can tell you there have been times where people applied, they didn't go through, they asked for feedback, I gave them feedback, then they started arguing against the feedback that I gave them. So I guess this creates another barrier for people where they're like, if I just give them like a blanket statement, like, hey, we found another candidate who has more experience, maybe they won't go back and forth with me so much. And I guess from a recruiter standpoint, when you have so many people you're dealing with, I understand that. But I agree with the other people who've been on your show. If someone asks for specific feedback, they're willing to listen, I will go out of my way to let them know. And again, depends on where you are in the process. If you've interviewed and then they're asking for feedback, but the hiring manager doesn't give me any feedback, I can't make something up and say, yeah, you probably didn't interview really well. That's probably what went wrong, right? So there's lines of communication. If the hiring manager chooses to provide feedback, I absolutely will. In my experience, I can tell you, not all the time do they want to give feedback. Sometimes they're like, just turn this candidate off, tell them we move it on with someone else. So From a personal perspective, I would love to give as many people feedback as possible, given that it fits the regular working hours. But that's not always the case realistically. Not all hiring managers are on the same pace.
Let's talk a little bit more about the LinkedIn side of things. So you spend a lot of your time building out valuable content on LinkedIn. So, you of all people should know just how cutthroat of a space it can be, especially for hiring managers and recruiters. And, sometimes, as a recruiter, you read these things and, it just kind of rubs you off the wrong way sometimes. So how do you suggest that recruiters kind of take these comments, address them, and just move forward?
Right. I would be very picky about who is making these comments. If you look at some of these top influencers on LinkedIn, essentially what they do, they'll hire some virtual assistant somewhere else in the world who will recycle the same content again and again for 50 different influencers, and it'll look exactly like this. Hiring managers, stop asking entry level roles for 10 years of experience. Be better. And then 10 days later, you'll see some other influencer say the exact same thing again and again and again. What it does is it feeds all the job seekers who are feeling this pain. And of course, they're like, yeah, life is so unfair. The job searching process is so unfair. And then they comment, and there's this whole cycle. So as a recruiter, when you're looking at those over and over again, you're like, I'm not, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to be as fair as you can. Two things that I like doing is vet the source. If these are people who are just churning these posts out for engagement, just ignore it. If you are genuinely you seeing a job seeker who's struggling with it, reach out and clarify it for them, because I think for individual cases, you have to see where you can make the change. The other thing I like to do, I have a extension on my LinkedIn which blocks my entire feed. So I log into LinkedIn, the whole thing is blank, nothing. I come on LinkedIn, I do what I have to do, and I leave, and my mental state is completely positive. It's not affected by all the posts I see, so maybe that's something recruiters could try out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's something that I feel like I should try out as well. Everyone should try that out, especially in this crazy time where there's just so much, we're just so saturated with information. And LinkedIn kind of is like any other social media profile. You have your influencers and you have just a lot of things going on, and sometimes it's a lot to take in. So
Yeah.
thank you for the great advice. Let's kind of wrap up this conclusion with some final words of encouragement and advice that you have for recruiters and talent acquisition folks out there.
Yeah, as someone who's been on both sides as a job seeker and and a recruiter, I can tell you the recruiter wants transparency from the job seeker wants transparency from the recruiter. What's the problem? Why can't we just make that happen? Why can't everyone just be as straightforward as possible? And I think with the recruitment side of things, all you have to do is once a week email a candidate saying, hey, this is the status of the update. Or if you're not considering them, make sure you understand their situation. Take the time to really talk to them, and this is why when I'm on the phone with candidates, I really genuinely try to take an interest in their life on the phone call, other than my scripted questions. So I know I'm not giving hope to someone who's been applying to their 12th job in the last 5 years and they haven't found anything. So be more human if you have to, and if you're a job seeker, you're reaching out to recruiters, just know they have a lot going on, a lot of roles they're handling at the same time. If they're not responding to your message, give them time, be persistent, and good things will come your way.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Yusir. We covered so much ground today, and it's just been really interesting to kind of hear your perspectives from both sides. So if anyone in the audience does have any questions for you, whether they're a recruiter or a candidate, what would be the best kind of channels to reach you at, and how should they contact you with more questions?
They can find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. It's Yasser Khan Coaching. That should be really easy to find.
All right, awesome, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been extremely fun, and like I mentioned, we definitely didn't have enough time to cover everything, but I definitely appreciate everything that you've shared us with such a concise amount of time. Thank you so much, and I will see you all next week.
Thanks a lot, Winona.